What up, though, everybody? It's Chris Platte. Listen, apologies for the, not sound technicality. It's just me. So I got to start the stream. I got to end the stream. I got to do all that. But before you tap in to this YG and Game live recap, I need you to like, comment, share, subscribe. Shout out to Potty, shout out to Money Murray. We had a full crew in this shit. They had to go, so it's just me. So I won't hold you too long, but I did want to do a live reaction to it. It is, 12:20 on the East Coast. These motherfuckers did not care about our time. So I'm gonna be in this. I'm gonna be in this myself. I'm gonna be dolo for this. I do want to kind of break down my thoughts of it, and then we'll let this rock as a video. But I did want to kind of get this because look, I'm West Coast Platte. You know what it is. It's West Coast P. It's West Coast P over here. So I wanted to make sure that I provided y'all the content of this YG and Game Verzuz live recap. The Game and YG Verzuz just ended, so we are here breaking it down for you. Shout out to Potty for giving me the kind of the rundown sheet, because I'm gonna be going off this, and I'm gonna be from there, breaking down round by round quickly, kind of where I'm at with it, and overall thoughts, overall takeaways, were that I came in knowing that YG was going to have a favorable advantage. Because YG and Game are both LA, and I gotta be careful how I'm speaking because I'm not LA, but there's just a certain level of affinity that YG has and the West Coast. And Game, not saying that Game doesn't get love on the West Coast. Game is loved. A lot of people have called him, like the uncle, But they've also said he's the uncle where, he says some crazy shit, but we let it slide because it's uncle. And I think that Game's sound, because Game held the West Coast when there was nobody coming from the West Coast. There was a dry spell on the West Coast, and Game carried the torch, and he did a phenomenal job. So that's why I'll never disrespect Game when it comes to the West Coast. And I think Game is a better all-time artist than YG. But specifically in this Verzuz, you got to think about one thing. You got to think about the fact that Game makes music that is universal. He does rap over Nas beats. He did rewind. Like, he did that. He took East Coast beats and he redid them. So Game has always had a sound that's bigger than LA. YG has always been a superstar in LA. We know what YG is nationally. And we know that Game has a bigger reach. And Game has a discography. And Game is the big homie to YG. And we saw that. We saw that playing out. That was a dope thing to see. The camaraderie between the two while they were doing the verses was really dope. But when it comes down to it, YG was always going to win this because he was always going to have home field advantage in LA. And I know that sounds disrespectful to Game, and I don't mean it to sound disrespectful to Game. I just have to be honest. I just have to look at the situation and call it what it is. And he was one of those artists that really, he's unapologetically West Coast, YG. And that's what West Coast music is. It's unapologetically them. They're not trying to adapt, to cohabitat. They're not trying to do none of that. West Coast music and West Coast culture has always been very much, it's LA, fuck everybody else. That's how they are. And I get that. Coming from Detroit, that Detroit versus everybody, LA's on that shit too. So I think that somebody that's a West Coast artist in YG, somebody that continues to never stray from the West Coast sound in YG, I always felt like he had an advantage coming in this. That's why I can understand the resume. Again, I think Game is a better all-time artist than YG. But I always expected YG to win this battle of verses because I expected the home crowd advantage to be YG. And also, I think that when you're narrowing it down to 20 bangers, YG's got as good a chance as anybody as being Game. He does. And we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Because overall, look, I had a scorecard of YG winning by a mile. And I'll run through it. You had BBT versus Dope Boy. That's already a point for YG. You had Bickenback versus It's Okay, One Blood. Game should have got that. The majority vote actually gave it to YG. I disagree. One Blood is a fucking banger. Then you had Fuck It Up versus My Flag, The Homies. That's another point for YG. You had My Brother versus West Side Story. This was, both of them pulled out heat in this round. But YG won this one. Then you have Where I'm From, which is a banger, versus Twist My Fingers, YG. YG gets that one. You have Thought versus Tuda and Boot It. That's another point I gave to YG. If you want to give it to Game, cool. Then you have Put You On the Game versus Who Do You Love. Who Do You Love? Easy. Every day of the week, not thinking twice about it. Red Nation, banger. But it went up against Fuck Down Trump. Clearly Fuck Down Trump. Not even close. Don't even think about it. Then you had Same Hoes versus You Broke. This is a battle of Nipsey records. I thought Game actually got the better of it. And I didn't know that they were going to do multiple Nipsey records. I should have known because when Game brought out his Nipsey record, I thought it was always going to be a checkmate if YG just played last time that I checked. That came to the next round. Game played They Roll, and YG played last time that I checked. And it was just, that was over. Game played Start From Scratch. YG played I Just Wanna Party. Game played Dreams. YG played Gang Bang. Game played All That. YG played Slide. It was just very well done by YG. Very well done. Game played All Eyes. YG played Don't Tell 'Em. Game played 100. YG played Left Right. That has to be a game point. Game played My Life. YG played I'm Good. I'm giving Game the point there. Game played Wouldn't Get Far. Banger. YG played Bompton. I gave YG the point there just off of the audience, just off of the atmosphere, just off of the reaction, but I think Wouldn't Get Far. So I'll actually give Game the point there. Then you had Higher versus Gang Gang with YG and Chef Boy. I thought that was a good one. Game played How We Do. YG played Bitches Ain't Shit. Game played Hey or Love It. YG played Still Brazy. Game played Easy. YG played Big Bank. I got Big Bank there. Game played Let's Ride. YG played BBT. I'm a Real One. So when you look at it, I had let's count it up. Let's count it up for Game. I had 1, I had 2, I had 3, I had 4, 5. Let's see. 6. I had 6 points for the Game out of 22. 16 to 20 16-6 was my scorecard. And look, I thought YG was gonna win. I thought he was gonna win comfortably. I didn't think that comfortably. I don't think Game played wrong records per se. Would I have played some different records if I was Game? Sure. Sure, you got more Doctor's Advocate. Sure, you got more documentary. You got more G Unit bag to go to. Game could have definitely made this a little bit closer, but again, I always thought YG was gonna win. I always thought YG was gonna win, because YG could have went crazier on his end too. But to me, I'm more disappointed in Game than I am YG when it came to song selection. I thought YG, for the most part, he played the records he was supposed to. Maybe you could argue a couple, but he did his thing. Game, I thought for the most part did his thing. I just feel like he kind of fell a little bit short. But I want to let everybody in the chat kind of respond to it and kind of react to it as we're here. But if we got no comments, that's just my thoughts on it. I'm curious to see what the next verses will be. I thought Game vs. YG was a good versus. I did. I hope they continue it, because I think that the versus conversation is always interesting, and I will always be here breaking it down. But right now, I have to say YG won, and YG won comfortably, and that was to be expected. I understand that he's the underdog because Game is a better all-time artist, but you have to understand the difference between verses and just totality. Like totality, Game has a bunch of albums, and they're all very good, and he raps well through every single album. But you have to understand that a versus in LA, where you're only playing 20 for 20, and YG has 20 muster records. Like, you knew what time it was, or you should have known what time it was, and that was my point with it. But other than that, I thought it was a great versus. I'm very glad. I'm very satisfied. I just wanted to break it down for you live right after it happened. I will be live breaking down every single verses. We have another episode of the Rap Cave podcast at 9 p.m. tomorrow, so make sure you are tapped in. It will be me and all the fellas. Until then, I will catch you later. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, help the channel grow. Do all the things that we need you to do. Until then, we'll catch you on the next one. And then I got to run around. Peace out.